Welcome back now to the Chip Shot Football Podcast here in the month of December now, flying through the NFL season, and we're going to go into the Sunday night football game that we saw last night. A game that I think at the beginning of the season where you saw this or when the schedule came out that this was going to be such a highly anticipated game, but as the course of the season has gone on, I think at least my optimism, my hopes on the 49ers have kind of dropped, and it's been pretty unlucky for them. I think it's just been a lot of injuries and just very uncharacteristic performances from them, especially, just getting to the Super Bowl and some people predicting that the Super Bowl was just going to be another rematch. It's far from that now as it looks, right? Because the 49ers end up losing this game, and really, to me, what this said was if you wanted to get an idea of how far the 49ers truly were from being a legit contender, I think we saw it last night in this litmus test going up against the Buffalo Bills. This was a great opportunity to kind of measure yourself and see where you fall among, one of the best teams in the NFL. They're one of the hottest teams in the NFL. I believe the Eagles have a 8-game win streak now, and the Bills are right behind them with a 7-game win streak. So they're just as good as, the Chiefs or the Lions or the Eagles throughout this entire season based on the record and how they're playing as well. This was a great chance for the 49ers to kind of measure up to them. But, just based on the score, I think you got a good idea of how far really the 49ers are just in this season and how unlucky they've gotten as well, because the Bills just completely dominated the 49ers. The final score was 35-10. And with that win, the Bills clinched the AFC East title with 5 games still to go. Now they're sitting at 10-2. And to me, Josh Allen just continues, if not already seals, the MVP conversation, unless Saquon Barkley just goes even crazier than we've already seen, and he continues to show just unimaginable things out there on the football field, then maybe this discussion can get extended a little bit more. But overall, I think Josh Allen, how steady he's been, and with a performance like that yesterday to clinch the division title as well, to me, he's probably, and I'm sure to a lot of people, the favorite already for the MVP. So it was a great day, great night overall from the Bills. They stay undefeated at home as well, while the 49ers drop to 5-7. They lose their 3rd straight game in a row and now sit in 11th place in the playoff race in the NFC. Also, losing Christian McCaffrey along the way. It was just announced a little bit ago that he is going to be placed on the IR. He is going to deal with around a 6-week, recovery time around there, if I remember correctly. So his 2024 season is unfortunately over. And also they mentioned that Jordan Mason suffered an ankle injury, which also will place him on the IR. So the 49ers not only lose this game, they lose arguably their best player and the revelation that came during this season trying to replace Christian McCaffrey. He is also probably going to miss the remainder of this season as well. So it looks like it's getting worse before it eventually gets better for the 49ers. That's just another 2 injuries to already being without Javon Hargrave. Dre Greenlaw hasn't played at all this season. Nick Bosa has been out for a couple games. Trent Williams has been out for a couple games. We saw Brock miss the Packers game. Brandon Ayuk's done for the year. You just rattle off all these names. They're all of their best players. So, yes, I mean, they haven't looked great overall still with some of the good players they do have, but not a lot of teams can deal with this amount of injuries, right? A lot of teams are dealing with a lot of injuries, but I think this has done it a little bit overboard with what the 49ers have been dealing with. But, going back to the week before this week, it was a 38-10 loss to the Packers on the road, and that piled up with this loss. Now San Francisco has been outscored 73-20, and they became the first defending conference champion since 1970 to lose consecutive games by 25-plus points. Again, when it rains, it pours for these kind of situations, it seems, right? And the Bills remain undefeated. Now, also their head coach, Sean McDermott, mentioned that the division title is great, but they still have high hopes to try and get that number 1 seed. And hopefully, for them, trying to see the Chiefs maybe drop another game and have the Bills jump over them if the Chiefs do lose another game and go to, what was it, 10-2 or 11-2 or something like that. The Bills would have the head-to-head over them, obviously, because they beat them. So that's still within reach. And I don't think a lot of people are counting them out either, which is pretty crazy considering we're talking about the two-time defending champion. I know they haven't played well, but it feels like people are really believing in the Buffalo Bills this year. And for good reason, right? That they're playing some of the best football in the NFL, if not, the best, right? Also, I forgot to mention that the 49ers, again, to kind of measure themselves up against, some of the best teams, they are still winless, against teams over 500. So that's the kind of stat you get when, you try to measure yourself up against some of the better teams. You got to beat those better teams to, to jump over them and get better position over them in the playoff race. So that's how things are going for the 49ers right now. And then just in terms of the performances in this game, it doesn't start further from Josh Allen. He had that MVP type of performance, 148 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He also scored a rushing and a receiving touchdown as well, which is insane. What was the stat? The stat was like, he became the first quarterback to score a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown in a single game, doing it all, just last night against the 49ers in an MVP type of performance against, the reigning, NFC conference champion, right? That's the kind of thing that wins you these awards. So he had a fantastic night. James Cook looked great with that rushing touchdown that he had, 107 yards, and really the receivers, it's not like anything jumps out the board, and I think that's a great thing for this Bills team, with the idea that Stephon Diggs and maybe Josh weren't getting along. I think, you look at these stats and there's not one guy that jumps off of the board, like one guy getting like 7 or 8 receptions or anything like that, like maybe it used to be. Now you see no one getting more than 4 receptions, 3 receptions, and the Buffalo Bills really leaning on the run game, and nobody's really having a problem with it either. I think that's the best thing about it, and I think it's allowed the Bills to kind of have this kind of season, right, where it's all about the team, right? It's all about what Joe Brady and this offense wants to be, and Josh, knowing that he has no pressure to throw it, he can throw it to whoever he wants, and no one's going to go up to him and say, like throw me the ball more. Like, Josh is the guy, is the leader, is the personality in that locker room, so no one's going to be ticked off if Josh doesn't throw them the ball, and if they are, the ball's probably not going to go to them anyway. So Josh is really what dictates everything in that way. He is the voice, the heartbeat of this team now, and I think that's benefited them a lot, obviously, based on their record and how they're playing. But on the other side of things, I think the 49ers really looked kind of like the Dolphins did on Thursday against the Packers, right? These warm weather teams, when they get around this snow, below 40, 30-degree weather, everything just looks off. They look discombobulated, and, Brock Purdy didn't even have 100 yards in this game. Jordan Mason led all rushers with 78 yards. Isaac Guerrero scored the only touchdown in this game for them. Juwan Jennings, had 56 receiving yards, but it just really all did not go as you would have thought. They fumbled the ball 3 times. Kyle Juszczyk fumbled on the goal line. Deebo Samuel fumbled, and Brock Purdy fumbled as well in this game. They were slipping. They couldn't hold on to the ball. Every time they did try to pass, it looked like it was an excruciating task to even complete, where you see Josh Allen just running all over the field, just throwing lasers and just bombs on the run. All the receivers for the Bills, just everything was on point, whereas with the 49ers, it looked like, they've never played in snow before. So it's kind of a weird thing. I don't really buy too much into it, but it's hard not to when the 49ers lose like this, and then they lose like they did against the Packers, and the Dolphins can't really get a win when it's below 40 degrees outside. It's pretty strange, but really just looking at how the game went down in the end, not too much to report on other than San Francisco actually started off winning this game, but as soon as, that was over, after they got that field goal, the Bills went on to score 3 straight touchdowns, while the 49ers missed 2 field goals during the rest of the first half, and then they went from winning 3-0 to losing 3-21 in the first half alone. And apart from the one touchdown that San Francisco got to make the score 10-28, they fumbled 3 times, like we mentioned, and they were outscored 7-14 in the second half. They only got 3 third-down conversions all game, and it clearly looked like just the warm weather effect, like we were talking about, and things like that. But we mentioned the injuries and how devastating that already was. Josh Allen and the kind of game that he had, but just overall, I was wondering, what was the biggest surprise, that the 49ers had been struggling this much, or the fact that the Bills have been dominating this much? Because if you guys remember, we talked about it, and I had the Bills finishing like third in the AFC East because I thought that they were going to take a step back. My mistake. But in that same breath, I didn't think the 49ers were going to disappoint this much, even through all the injuries. I thought still that they were going to be competing or be somewhere around where like the Bucks are right now, like a 6-6 or something like that. I didn't think they were going to be 5-7 and really look like they were going to miss the playoffs. So to me, I would say the biggest surprise to me has been the 49ers, because the Bills, it's not so much that I'm surprised with the Bills, because the Bills you knew were going to be okay because they had Josh Allen. I think if anything, I've been more surprised with how bad the Jets and the Dolphins have been. But comparing the 49ers to the Bills, I've definitely been more surprised about the 49ers, because I've always been like hanging around there, like thinking that they were going to get back into it. But as soon as I saw the stretch of games coming up and the fact that they were already in a hole, I kind of started to lose a lot of that optimism. So to me, the biggest surprise comparing both of these teams has been the 49ers. Again, the injuries have been super unfortunate, but to be 5-7 and look pretty defeated and exhausted, just from the constant contention year in and year out, I think this has been the year where it's caught up to them a little bit, and unfortunately, it looks like they're not going to make the playoffs this year. So, yeah, I mean, overall, the Bills did what I'm sure a lot of people expected them to. They remain undefeated at home, and now are trying to go for that number 1 seed. We'll see if they catch up to the Chiefs for the remainder of 2024. But we're going to go all the way back to Friday now and talk about the Chicago Bears, because we didn't talk about them finally firing Matt Eberflus. A big move, I think, for the Chicago Bears, and we're going to go into it, whether it was the right or wrong decision, and just where do the Bears go from now. So we'll be right back with that. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
Looking